We have Ambassador Keshi, former Consul General of Nigeria to the United States in Atlanta, a veteran diplomat here with us to discuss the situation in the Middle East. Ambassador Keshi, there's absolute chaos in the Middle East, complete catastrophe, humanitarian crisis. What do you think? What is going on? Who is to blame? I think that's a big question.
Thank you, Ruben, and happy Sunday. To your question, who is to blame? So many people should bear the responsibility for the disaster going on today in the Middle East, particularly in Gaza. The first culprit, the first man who should bear the full responsibility for what's happening today is the Prime Minister, Netanyahu himself. When he was elected, he had some sympathy for the peace process. But in order to become Prime Minister, not just to become Prime Minister, but to stay on as the longest serving Prime Minister, he went to bed with the far right, a group of, completely irrational religious group that gave a condition that they were not ready to cede any land to the Palestinians. And for him to survive or to be prime minister or to stay as long as, possible, he decided to work with these people and abandon the peace process after Oslo. And so if this disaster is happening, himself and those leaders should bear the full responsibility for what is happening, not just to the people of Gaza, but to the unfortunate victims in Israel that have become victims of, Hamas attack. The second blame should go to the Arab leaders themselves. And we should honestly not just hold anybody responsible, but Arab leaders. They've abandoned the Palestinian cause. Are we to understand that a number of Arab states have recognized the state of Israel? They've normalized relations. Are we to understand that the settlement of the Palestinian question was not part of the negotiation? And a typical example of the abandonment of the Palestinian by the Arab states, it's what Saudi Arabia is doing today. Saudi Arabia is sending envoys around the world. Guess what? To do what? In the midst of a horrendous crisis in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is more concerned about hosting the World Cup. And now it visited Nigeria last week to invite African leaders to Saudi Arabia African Summit. For goodness sake, what gives Saudi Arabia the impudence to think that 60 African countries will come to Saudi Arabia? In the midst of such a crisis, Saudi Arabia is focusing on the World Cup. It is this abandonment of the middle of the Palestinian cause that has made Israel over this long years since Oslo, since the peace agreement collapsed, that Israel has been treating the Palestinians like orphans and, like the chief of army staff said, like animals. And when you treat people like animals, for goodness sake, what do you think? One day they will behave like animals. And when animals do behave, they don't have a sense of reasoning or strategy. And that's exactly what the Palestinians unfortunately did. You know, when you understand the psychic of the Palestinians vis-a-vis Israel, for the Palestinians, they have a very narrow definition of victory. That victory is if they can kill one Israeli, if their rocket can destroy one building in Gaza, in Tel Aviv. For the Palestinians, for Hamas, it's victory. But Israel has a broader definition of victory. The near annihilation, removal completely.
Ambassador Keshi, as you well know.
No, let me finish. Let me finish.
No, because you are blaming the Palestinians. Let me just make my... You are blaming the
Israelis. No, I'm not blaming the... No.
You are blaming the Israelis.
I'm not blaming the... I'm saying to you that No, I'm saying that when you have a narrow definition of victory, this is when you do this kind of madness of going in and breaking in and you are happy that you have won. But they did not think of the consequences of their action, that the Israelis will retaliate in such a manner that will create this kind of humanitarian crisis. So everybody in the game is to be blamed. And of course, finally, the Americans. They took their eyes off the ball for a long time. They just, because of what is happening in Israel, they decided to abandon the peace process as well. And this is why we're in this, because everybody has completely abandoned this crisis and left it to the both sides to manage. We know both sides cannot find peace until somebody strong enough, like the Americans and the rest of the world, get involved and try to force them to a negotiating table. That's the point I want to make.
No. And I was going to say that isn't the international community hypocritical in this matter? The U.S., yes, Anthony Blinken.
Precisely. That is it.
Anthony Blinken is all over the place. He's going around. But the Americans, are they not hypocritical? So they say, okay, we are with the Israelis. But Iran says we are with the Palestinians. So what are we dealing with? The hypocrisy of the international community and the failure of the international system.
I don't know about the failure of the international system, but I will speak extensively on the hypocrisy of the international community. You cannot on one side say, oh, the Palestinians did something horrible. But guess what? The Israelis have been doing things worse than this for the last couple of years. And everybody kept quiet. Everybody kept quiet. But that's not the issue. The issue is that we must find a way to get the two sides. Look, today when you watch some reports coming in from Israel, you see families of those who've been kidnapped pleading for their loved ones to be released and saying, and I quote one or two people that I've heard, saying that, I hope this will make us find peace. It shows you that the people of Israel themselves want peace. But look at what their leaders are saying. For their leaders, until they deal with Hamas completely, annihilate Hamas, they are not ready to compromise on anything. And that's, for me, that's not the way to, that's not the way to go. So the international community is pretending that this is the first time it's happening. That's why they are condemning Hamas so badly. No, this has gone on for more than 20 years, for goodness sake. For more than 20 years. The Palestinians, the people in the Gaza Strip have been on the receiving end. And the sooner that we all come to our senses and stop this hypocrisy and find a way to, finally resolve the crisis in the Middle East.
But sir, what do you think of this two-state solution? We have been on that since 1936. Yasser Arafat rejected the two-state solution. Mahmoud Abbas, who is head of Palestine now, also rejected the two-state solution. The issue, some people argue, is that the Palestinians don't want Israel to exist. What do you say about that?
No,
shouldn't there be some accommodation?
I think we have moved. No, I think we have moved. Bear in mind that not all the Arab states initially did not want Israel to exist. And I think everybody has moved away from that. The fact is that the two-state solution is probably the best option we have today and the best option on the table. And this is the point I'm trying to make, that if the world, the international community led by the Americans and also supported by the Arabs have insisted and compelled both parties, perhaps we would have had the two-state solution. But when the prime minister who signed the Oslo Agreement was murdered, and Hamas itself contributed to the collapse of the two-state solution, and Arafat, couldn't continue with the peace process, we are now reaping the benefit of, that rejection by both parties. But as it is today, there is no better solution on the table than the two-state solution. And the world must find a way of persuading, in particular, the Israeli leadership. Pounding, beating, destroying Gaza is not the solution. And that is the honest truth.
Okay, sir. It looks like international law is at stake here. The Israelis are adopting a scorched earth policy. They're saying you must move from one part of Gaza to the other. Yes, the Hamas themselves, they are killing children, everybody, busy killing children. So where does this leave the regime of international law, the international world order?
Ruben, I don't think that this
humanitarian crisis.
We all become emotional, and when we just begin to say they are killing children, as if this is the first time children are being killed in this crisis. Since this crisis started, not today. Remember, there was something like this about a year or some 18 months ago. Children were killed, women were killed, So this is not, we are all just emphasizing they are killing children. This is not the first time they are killing children. Since this crisis started, since the collapse of the Oslo Agreement, since the Israelis and the Hamas have decided to be the main actors in this crisis, children have been killed on both sides, particularly in the Hamas, in Gaza. The point I'm trying to make is, if we do not compel particularly Israel and the Arab states do not rope in Hamas, we are going to see worse crisis happening even more. And look, Ruben, let's get real here. You know very well that this is not the first time. This is not the first time Netanyahu has gone on television to boast that they will destroy Hamas. And after every round of this kind of drama, Hamas leaders were told they've killed all the Hamas leaders, but guess what? Hamas brings up new leadership. They go back to the trenches, they regroup, and we are back to another round. Now they can send 1 million away, but everybody in the Gaza Strip is a Hamas sympathizer. Interview that was done at some point, children all over the street was being asked, what do you want to do, or what do you want to be in the next couple of years? The answer was, we want to join Hamas. That should have warned the Israelis that the time has come to make peace. Let me go back. I think, if I'm right, it was Chinua Achebe in Things Fall Apart that said that it is good sometimes for the strong man to behave like the weak man. That's a philosophy or a principle that Israelis, are not interested in, because they have not just the support of the international community, who feel guilty about what they've done in that part of the world, and therefore think that supporting Israel consistently, irrespective of its intransigent on a number of issues, is the right way to go. But again, I maintain that until the world can rope in Israel, and the Arab world can convince Hamas and the Palestinians that it is time to make peace, this is just another round of the crisis. And once it settles, and Hamas is able to rebuild, because they will rebuild. Look, Ruben, you know this very well. History teaches us that those who are fighting for their rights, for their freedom, for independence, they never give up. And invariably, they would win. They will get what they want. So let's understand that and hope that good reason, sense will prevail in that part of the world. And, but if the Americans do not get involved, particularly it's unfortunate that Hamas again miscalculated. This is an election cycle in the United States. And no president is going to say anything different from what you hear Biden or Trump saying now. But let's just hope that with the disaster we are all watching, from the comfort of our homes, that leaders of the world will put away their hypocrisy and really get down and find a solution to this crisis.
Well, Ambassador Keshi, how much of a factor is Iran in this matter? Because Iran has also been saying that the Americans should be careful. And then we have this big humanitarian crisis that we face. The Egyptian corridor, the Americans are not allowing it to happen. And then Iran is also saying this is going to be a big matter. What is the worst scenario that we can possibly face?
Well, you see, again, that's a very good question. That's also part of what has happened over the years. That in that Middle East, that the world has focused on Iran. rather than deal with the most important or critical issue in the Middle East. Yes, Iran is there, but as of today, Iran is probably the only visible, open supporter of the Palestinian cause. Yes, other Arab states help with humanitarian, funding of humanitarian assistance to, to the Palestinians and so on. But Iran remains the only state openly supporting, the Palestinians. And the world, look, there have been searches. They've been searching to see whether Iran actually helped Hamas. I don't know. I have not really listened to much news today. I don't know whether they found a clue. But the point is that, look, you cannot be condemning Iran for supporting the Palestinians, particularly Hamas, and you are praising other countries for supporting Israel. This is part of the hypocrisy that you see in the world. You think you are free to support one part of the crisis, but you find me guilty for supporting the other part of the other side in the crisis. No, they've taken sides, and their support is unwavering for the Palestinian cause, which other Arab countries have invariably, by their actions, abandoned. So they are supportive of Palestinians. They are not pretending about that, just like the rest of the Western world is not pretending about their support for Israel. So it balances out. But they are making it as if the Iran support is very wrong. What of their own support? Look, let's leave all this support. My position is everybody should come together and discuss that there's a disaster about to happen. You cannot move 1 million plus people within 24 hours to anywhere and think that it will not be disastrous. You have deprived them of food, you have deprived them of water, you have deprived them of light, and you are claiming that you are going to treat them like animals. What do you expect them to do?
Okay, Ambassador
so when Iran
Keshi
says, be careful.
Ambassador Keshi, what do we do about international humanitarian law, IHL, as it is otherwise known, the law of armed conflict, as it is otherwise known? Geneva Convention, 1949, Geneva Convention, Protocol 1 of 1971. On both sides, everybody is violating the relevant laws. The United Nations Security Council is helpless. There is humanitarian crisis. The Pope is preaching. The Pope is saying respect humanitarian rights. Who is going to enforce those rights? Will anybody respect international humanitarian law? Or we are just all helpless?
Certainly, we are all helpless. That's the honest truth. When the Russians began to invade Ukraine and were bombing civilian population, destroying infrastructure in Ukraine, where nobody spoke about international law, and yes, Russia was cautioned, but nobody took action. We are having a similar situation. Look, the truth of the matter is that these laws are there to guide, international behavior. But nation states will do what they believe is in their own interest. And that's exactly what you are seeing the Israelis do, for example. They believe it is their own interest, to do what they are doing. But the international community that signed this agreement, look, America was once described as a global policeman, but it does carry out his police functions based on its own national interest. And so that's playing out today. So the law is there, and it is one thing to have the law there. But who is going to enforce the law in the situation that we are now? And by the way, where we are today, I'm not too sure that the Israeli leadership, the Israeli War Council that has been constituted, will listen to anybody until they have carried out their objective, in Gaza. And that's unfortunate. But my hope is that, yes, the Americans have given as much support as possible. They should also be behind the scene, whispering to the ears of the War Council that, look, enough is enough. You've done the best you can. Look, Ruben, in the past, when this has happened, the first desire of every negotiator is to get the hostages out. Is to get the hostages released. But today, while there's a backdoor discussion going on to find the hostages, Israel is not respecting any rules of engagement. It wants to go in and says it wants to go and start searching. And that's why it's asking everybody to move out of Gaza. Why don't we take this one by one? You know, go around us. I mean, let the backdoor negotiations continue to find the hostages and persuade Hamas to release the hostages first. And once you've released the hostages, look, they can begin to talk of what next would happen. But Israelis are not ready to wait for the negotiations or for anybody to find the hostages or for the hostages to be released. I saw a news item that said, I think yesterday, you know, that the 6-hour window is closing. So, look, the world is in a hopeless situation because over time, everybody has really abandoned this crisis and allowed Israel to have a field day. That's the honest truth for me.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Ambassador Joe Keshi, for joining us on This Is Live, this Sunday talk show.